Welcome to the Fishing for a Reason podcast. I'm super fired up to have Karey Small on the line. And if you don't know us very well, she's actually one of my very, very dear friends. So it's kind of exciting. Scott was the first official guest on this podcast, but he's my husband. He, can't really say no. Karey is the real official first guest. So I'm super, super pumped to have you on here because your journey as a fisherwoman and also just as a leader in general has been so inspiring to me. And I'm excited to share your message with everyone else that may not know you and needs to know you. So, with that, can you tell me about your background as a fisherwoman?
Yeah, I didn't grow up fishing, although I did grow up in the Pacific Northwest, and I grew up as a kid who built forts and kind of a tomboy. I rode motorbikes, and I've always been out in the woods doing something, but I didn't grow up with a family that fished or hunted or did any of that. And so I really got introduced to fishing just in the last 6 years. I met my now husband. So I was dating Darren, and he fished for his whole life. Like, he was very much into fishing. And I kind of just went along to see what this was all about. Like, went on his boat. He fished out of Edmonds, and I met a few of his friends. And I don't think I really understood how it would impact me at that point. I was just kind of like, oh, this is a fun thing that we can do as a couple that I really think would kind of fits with my outdoorsy side. And so we just started going. He could just walk right on his boat in Edmonds. So we could go like in the morning before work. We could go drop a line, especially during coho season. And I didn't really know what I was doing. I didn't know how to run a downrigger. I didn't know anything about the setups or rods or anything at all. But I think I'm the type of person who's kind of a quick study in the sense that I watch what people do and I can duplicate that. But I'm very hands on. So I kept asking him a lot of questions. We just started fishing together. It became something that we could do with each other that I really, it fit with me. I just kind of like to be able to go and do. And that's the way that fishing is for us. And then just started to meet a few people in the community. And then it kind of took off from there.
It's funny, you're being very humble in your fishing journey because you're like, oh, yeah, I was just one of these things. And my boyfriend at the time liked, but now you are the president of the Puget Sound Anglers. You've run Wake for Warriors events. Like, you've gone from I have only fished for 6 years to I'm competing in derbies and placing. So, can you kind of walk us through what went from like, this is cool to I'm going to freaking own this shit? Because I
Yeah,
think you're
yeah, yeah,
dominating in all
yeah.
ways.
I think it was really honestly the transition happened a little bit over time, but not very long time. I love the competition of it. I am a competitor. I never really professionally or even like collegiately played any sports, but I've always been a competitor. I love competition. I love like sharing information and community and things like that. And so it started off kind of small. Like, we did a derby. It was the Friday Harbor Derby, actually. And I remember there was a girls group. There was a group of girls who were just chatting off to the side, and it was Crystal who like started the chat, and you were in there, some other people that I now consider my friends. It took me forever to meet in person because at first it was just this chat group, and I was like, oh, that's my friend so and so. And there's like, well, how do you know them? I'm like, well, I don't really know them. I just chatted with them online. And so it started there really with just kind of sharing information. And I felt like I was like part of a secret club that I could like get other information because my husband is like, he's fished and he's got all the connections and the people. And so at first I was kind of in the background. I was just, our boat's called the Black Dog. So I was like Black Dog's girlfriend. Then I was Black Dog's wife, but I wasn't Karey Small or Karey the fisherman. I was someone's wife or someone's partner. And so at that point, when we started communicating this women's little chat, it became more like I had information that he didn't have. And he was like, what are the girls saying? Like, what is so and so saying? And then I still remember the day on the water where I first met you. I never met you in person, and you and Scott were on the boat, and we were on the boat, and I saw you cross the water, and I was like, I think that's Jamie. Like, and he's like, wait a minute, I know him. Like, I know Scott from derbies and from PSA. And it took a minute for me to really figure that out. That community would become like my actual core community of friends and people who encouraged me to do some of the things that I've done. When I think back, it was the all members derby that really changed my trajectory with
And
fish.
for listeners that don't know, what is All Members Derby?
Yeah, so Puget Sound Anglers has a bunch of chapters. And at the time we lived in Edmonds, so we were part of Snow King chapter, which funny story I'll tell you in a minute. But so they have chapters all over, and they had this derby. It was a competition, fishing competition, biggest fish wins, right? And it was all the different chapters got together. What happened to be hosted here in Anacortes, where I live now. And it was the Fidalgo San Juan Islands chapter that was hosting it. I think Chris Long was the president. And so we went and did this derby with our friends, Sean and Trina, who are also the chapter presidents for another chapter. Ron and Jean Garner were there with us, who are the president, the state president, and his wife. But I didn't even know that all these people were so influential in the community. They were just people that I had met along the way. And so we went out and we're fishing this derby, and I caught a nice fish. And it was kind of like the crunch time. Like it was like, weigh-in was about to end. So all these derbies have an ending to their weigh-in. And I'm nervous and I'm shaking and I'm running up with this fish, and I don't know what to do. I've never done this before. Like I've never weighed a fish in a derby. And so I go running up the ramp, and I see Jean Garner, and she says, go this way, go over here. That looks like a nice fish. Like go put it up there. And they're like asking me all these questions, like, what'd you catch it on? Like, what, what kind of spoon, what kind of boat do you have? I'm like, I don't know any of this. I'm looking at Jean, and she's going, you're part of Snow King chapter. This is she's like coaching me through it. And so I felt like I was sort of in a little club that was going to support me. And my name was on the board. And so my name was on the board. And I go back to the boat, and Darren's like, it's not over yet. Like there's still a bunch of people to weigh in. Like, don't count on staying up there on the board. But it didn't matter. Like, my name was on a board with a bunch of other people, not a women's division. It was like the board. At the time, I did not understand the significance of that. But today, I still have a picture of that board when I was in third place at the time. And Larry Quesnell was on there, who's a big member of our club. And Chris Long was on there, who is the current president. Their names were on that board with me. And I think it just changed my perception of the way that I could impact the fishing community, because I thought, I might be kind of good at this. Like I might actually be good at this, and I might actually be able to compete with everyone, not just like a women's division or some other, specialty division, but I might be able to actually compete. And so I think ended up taking fifth place. I got a Seahawks toolbox out of the deal. Like it was no big deal. But my friend,
it is a big deal. What are you talking about?
I know, but it was like that wasn't the point, right? Like winning the thing wasn't the point. The point was that I was in there and I was competing with these people. And my friend Trina actually knocked me out and took third place. And I remember thinking that was probably most significant, was just that if I was going to lose, I was going to lose to, someone that I really respected. And then it just changed the way that I used to just kind of do whatever Darren was doing. Like I would just follow his lead and do whatever he was doing. But at that point, I started thinking maybe I can choose the setups. Maybe I can learn more about the reel and what I like and don't like. And it evolved over time. He bought me my own rod at some point. He had a friend who built rods. And so he built me this rod, and I was like, oh, I have my own rod now. Like, oh, okay, this is different. Now it's like, if you're bowling, you have your own bowling ball or whatever. Like it was just different. It was a different level of approach. And then I think the PSA just sort of, it intrigued me. Like you can have this group of people who's going to share information, teach you things, encourage you, just provide some content that you can learn from. And so I slowly started just tagging on one more thing. Filleting fish, like I learned how to fillet fish, and that became a differentiator for me because I didn't see a lot of women filleting their own fish. And so I thought, you know what? I'm going to learn how to do this. And I wasn't good at it at first. I was terrible at it, but I watched what Darren did and then watched what other people do. And then one day I caught a halibut, and I thought, this is different. Like I mostly salmon fished at that point. I hadn't really caught a lot of other species of fish. And I went and I Googled how to fillet a halibut. And I was like, this is different. Okay, I'm going to try this. And I did it. And I did it good, I think. I mean, I was pretty proud of myself. It was like, there's something about just catching it your way and then landing it and then filleting it and processing it and eating it that just changes everything about the process. So yeah, I think it just over time became more and more part of my life. For PSA, Puget Sound Anglers, our chapter was kind of small but mighty, a lot of old time folks who knew a ton about fishing, and I wanted to know more from them, but I wanted to get their respect first so that they would like actually tell me things. And so I just thought if I got up there and I let it, never know what could happen, right? Like maybe you can make things happen. Maybe you could make this exciting and new people would come and you could get more, speakers who would speak to the brand newest person. And it took a minute, but I feel pretty proud of where we've come to today. And I wouldn't say that I know everything. I have a really great tribe around me who supports me. And when I feel like I'm not sure what to do next, then all the members of our team come together and say, okay, well, here's some things we can try, or here's an idea. So it's just definitely a village, but it's been a big journey. Yeah.
It's been quite the journey, and one that's really been awesome to watch and inspiring for somebody. I'm an angler, but I'm one of those people that when I started, similar to you, I was an observer and a watcher and not the dominant person. And I've seen you take that and accelerate it. Like, I think it took me like 10 years to get there. You just like accelerated it. So I love to know, the theme I'm hearing is that you're willing to start and you're willing to suck at it, and then willing to take that feedback to get better. What advice would you give to anglers that, or even people that have a boat and they're like, fishing? Maybe? What
Yeah.
advice would you give somebody like that who's kind of thinking about it?
Yeah, I think there's so much out there that you can look at, but it really doesn't replace just doing it. You just kind of have to get out there. I think I've always been a person who's not afraid to fail at things. Like I'll just try it. And if it's not great, then I'll keep adjusting until I find the right mix of what does work. Even the best anglers, my husband has fished for 30 years. He has won some big derbies. He's a very good fisherman, but he even has days. He had one the other day on our last day of our opener where he just didn't catch any fish. And even he has those days. So I know that I've talked to too many anglers out there. It's not going to be a perfect day every time, and it's never going to work out exactly the way that you want it to or that you hope it does. Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. But I've never been afraid to fail. And so if I can see somebody else doing something, I know I can do it if I just put my mind to it. So I'm also not afraid to say I don't know, or I'll ask the stupid questions, which I think sometimes people are intimidated by all the verbiage in fishing, and so then they don't know. I think it took me 6 months to figure out what the adipose fin was on a hatchery. So on your podcast that you just did, I was like, I'm so glad she explained that, because he would say like, oh, is it wild? Is it hatchery? I'd be like, I don't know. What do you mean by that? Like, but I didn't say it,
Yeah.
I wouldn't want to look dumb. Same thing with the species of salmon. There's a lot of species of salmon, and it's very difficult for me to spot it just right on the dot, right? Like Darren can see it a mile away. Like when we're reeling it in, he's like, oh, it's a coho or it's a king. I have to like actually like think about it for a minute. And so I think that's what intimidates most people from trying and learning and doing, is just that they're afraid to look dumb. So they just don't do it. I can remember I went fishing with my friend Brianna Bruce, who runs a charter company up here all along the up and down I-5 all the way. And she took me out on the river, and I'd never been on the river before. And my husband hadn't really done a lot of river fishing like recently. And so he was kind of jealous that I went, and he's like, how are you going to know what to do? And I'm like, she's going to tell me what to do. That's why I'm going with a charter captain, so she can show me. And sure enough, it took me a minute. I mean, it wasn't like, casting out and reeling back was something that I'd done, because I mostly fish in the Sailor Sea and I mostly downrigger fish. And so I had not done a whole lot of that, but I'm never afraid to try it. I mean, I'll try anything a few times to see if I like it. And then if I like it enough, I'll keep trying and keep learning and do more. So I think that's probably the key to like accelerating that experience, is getting out there with yourself or someone and trying it. Book a charter, book a class, book some time with someone who knows, ask people, join PSA. All of those things will provide you with answers to the questions. I think a lot of people say like, oh, fishermen don't share information, right? Like, I think that's a myth. I think that's not been the case for me. Maybe it's just because I'm annoying enough that I'll ask the questions over and over until they tell me. But I found fishermen to be very helpful in sharing with new people, and very, very forthcoming with information that I need to get the job done. And the more you're around them, the more they trust you, the more they'll tell you, and the more they'll share what they think. Yeah, I think that's been the key. I also have worked in leadership most of my life. So like leading a club to me didn't seem intimidating. The intimidating part was the fishing part, the stuff I don't know, right? I'm still learning about fish enhancement. And I still feel like I'm like incapable of leading the club in that particular area because I don't understand it. I don't get the why you can't do certain things. But I also think that makes me better at that because I'm willing to say, like, why not? Like, why can't we do that? Why aren't we able to do that? You know, we ran a halibut derby. We've run some, we're doing a derby coming up here. We'll talk about that in a few, but we're doing some things that we said we couldn't do anymore, and we're doing them. And I think that that's the one thing that we need to challenge ourselves on in everything we do in life is why not me? Why not now? You know, I think those are keys. And for anyone out there who's just learning how to fish, once you hook one, it's pretty hard. It's a pretty crazy addiction that you can't get enough of and you want to do more of. And then you start looking for other species and other areas you can fish in. And yeah, there's a lot to it.
Absolutely. It's completely addictive. And I think the reason is, like you said earlier in your story, that it's not guaranteed. The
Yeah.
30-year veteran that's won the $10,000 derbies has a bad day. And that's what makes it almost an equalizer and beautiful and humbling. It's just magic. You also talked about failure, and you said multiple times, I'm not afraid to fail. I'm going to just say I am, straight up. I'm the girl who's afraid to fail, and it holds me back all the time. So I know this isn't totally fishing related, but it's very life related. Like, what creates that fearlessness in you, and how would you translate it to somebody like me?
Yeah. I think stop thinking about what everyone else is thinking about. They're not thinking about you, they're thinking about themselves.
Mhm.
So they're either going to be discouraged by you or inspired by you. And I think people are inspired more by people who are just willing to get out there and look silly and not be perfect and not have everything go right than they are by the person who's like, yeah, everything goes perfect for me. Everything is just right. I'm, like this has all been roses and puppies. Like it's never like that. And most people don't relate to that. But when you hear a story of someone who's like, yeah, we got out there and everything got tangled up and the fish got caught in the motor and the net wouldn't come out and the net broke when we were trying to catch it. Then you can go, oh, yeah, that happened to me too. Like, oh, maybe I can do what that person's doing. I don't know. I dropped out of high school when I was 15. I had a baby when I was really young. And so I didn't really have the opportunity to not be humble. Like it carried through my whole life, right? Like the whole time. And so as time went on, I started doing things that people probably thought I couldn't do, right? Like back in that day, there was no teenage mom thing, it wasn't a thing. And so I had to get a job and I had to support my kids and I had to figure out how I was going to get my education. And it took me till I was 50 to get my master's degree. But I went back to school and got my master's degree with a bunch of people who were half my age, And so it's not because I'm something special. It's because I'm not something special. I'm just like everyone else. I just am willing to do things that are crazy and people don't, it's just you stop caring about what other people think and all of a sudden you're just fully empowered. I think 50, I tell people this all the time, like when you hit 50, it's like this really crazy thing that happens to you where you're just like, okay, I'm over it with the world. Like they aren't doing anything for me and I'm just going to do whatever I want to do. And if I'm motivated to do something, I'm going to do it. And if someone's going to tell me I can't, they're going to have to tell me why. And it's going to have to be a really good reason. Like it's going to have to really, really stick with me. And so I don't know. It's not something I would tell you I struggle with it all the time. It's not like I'm not human. I don't like wonder, I just think that fishing is different in the sense that you can sort of be yourself and it does let you be yourself because there's no right answer. Maybe that's the reason why fishing is so attractive because I don't know if you remember, we had our club meeting and we did fish that spot and we asked all our members to say what they were going to fish with on opening king season because it's like our Christmas morning, right? And there literally wasn't one single double answer. Like every single person had a different deal. And so you think about that and you go, there is no right answer here. Like no matter what you say, the one thing you could try could be the winning thing. And that's empowering because it's like, oh, I can't really pick wrong. I mean, it might not be right for that day, but I'm not going to really pick wrong over time unless you're just totally just not doing it right. If you're not having success and you're not catching anything ever, then you might want to ask some people like, what am I doing wrong? Maybe you're going too fast. Maybe you don't have the right depth. Maybe you're not reading your electronics right. Like there's a lot of things out there that can help you adjust a little bit.
Hmm.
But to be honest, you could be a total mess up. I remember Wayne Lampley just went to Port Angeles and he's kind of brand new to our area of fishing. And he said, I didn't know what I was doing. And I just put him down and I had him suspended. And guess what? I caught a whole bunch of fish. And everybody in the room was like, oh, you're supposed to fish the bottom when you fish this species. And he was like, well, I didn't, and I caught fish. So again, there's no wrong answer. The wrong answer is just not putting your stuff in the water, like not trying. It's the only wrong answer.
Can't catch a fish without a line in the water.
Nope.
Fact.
Yeah.
What about your biggest failure? Like, I guess, mess up. What would you, the one that taught you the best lesson as a fisherwoman, like something that went wrong that was also really, really valuable? Because so many times I see anglers beat themselves up, or if they're new, they're just afraid to try. They make a mistake. They don't want to make a mistake. Mistakes are the gold.
Yeah.
That's what we believe. So I would
Yeah.
love to know what mistakes have been your gold.
I think there's a lot of them. There's no one big one. There's a lot of little ones, right? Reeling too hard, not reeling hard enough. Netting is probably my biggest like fear in life because I just can't. I don't have long arms. I'm short. I'm super short. And so you have to really get out there and get under the fish. And so there's many times where I've missed the first one or the second one. And I guess this is the one time when I do care what people think because like boats are around watching, they're watching because I watch other people when they're trying to net one. And you're saying like, oh my gosh, like get under the fish. Like what's wrong with you? And so there's like this pressure I build in my head. So I think like practicing netting, doing it, like just doing it. That's the biggest mistake that I've made is when I pull back and I don't do something because I think that I'm not going to be good at it. So I let someone else do it. When we fish with other people on the boat, sometimes I'll take a back seat and I need to make sure that I'm still in that mode of helping. Yeah, I can't think of one like key mistake that I've made. I remember the first time I learned how to tie my own leaders and I like doing it now, but I didn't like it in the beginning. I wanted to find a way that I didn't have to do that ever. So I wanted to never lose anything. I wanted to never, like have it come off because I didn't want to have to ask Darren to do it for me because I'm not that person, but I also didn't want to do it myself. And I remember we lost a pretty nice fish and the leader came untied. You could see that it came untied. Like, it came up and there was nothing on the end and it was just this squiggly tie that came out. You could tell it came untied. But then I just learned how to tie better. Like it's not, I don't know. I don't look at catching every fish as a failure. The only time I feel like a failure is when we don't hook anything. Then I think, what are we doing wrong? Or we didn't touch anything, like nothing got on the hook. That's when I get a little discouraged. But I don't hang up my fishing pole and say I'm not good at fishing anymore, right? I just go back again and do it again. But there's no one specific thing. I think fishing as a couple, and I know this is for a whole nother series, but fishing as a couple, you really have to work on how you communicate with each other, what your roles are, and how you're going to tag team, because that's when most of the mistakes happen is when we aren't talking to each other or we're not saying like, hey, I think we're getting tangled up, or I think, that turn was a little bit too tight, or here's what I need you to say to me when you need me to do something, here's how I need you to talk to me so that I can stay calm and you can stay calm and we can land the fish. It's a big part of relationships. So I think that probably our biggest mistakes come from just missing a fish that we really, that we saw. Like those are heartbreaking, right? If you never saw the fish, was it really on? Did you really have it? But when you see the fish at your boat and it comes off or you miss it, those are probably the times when you go, okay, what do we need to do differently next time? My husband's kind of the consummate, like, what could we do better type of a person. And I'm more like, let's get in there and do it again type of person, like without thinking it through. And so we have a good balance there with just like thinking about what we can do better and how we can be on deck. He's adamant about clearing the rod. So like if you're fishing and the fish is on, he wants everything out of the way. It's just his style, where I'm like, let's keep that in there. What if we catch another one? Like I'm obsessive about having the lines in the water. And so we have to work through that sometimes where it's like, do we really need to clear the lines? It doesn't look like, is it big? Like, do we need to? And we'll have that little conversation. But yeah, our mistakes are mostly around just things are going to happen and just getting over it and getting right back in there and doing it again and hoping for better next time.
I love that you brought up the value of communicating too. And I fish with my husband, and it's so freaking important to have a good communication style on the boat. because that usually is a barrier. And it's great for your relationship when you work through it on the boat. It translates into the rest of life too. I don't know if you've experienced that, but it's been, I don't know, fun journey. And I named this podcast Fishing for a reason because there's so many metaphors in fishing for life, for business, for health, for relationships, just everything. We're all fishing for a reason. What's your reason? Like, why? What inspires you? What do you really, really think about and care about? And maybe fishing is a vehicle for?
Well, I would say it started off with just being time with my husband, disconnected from the world, right? Like that time where, you can get out and get into nature because nature really refreshes me and renews me. And then disconnecting. Some of our best times on the boat have been when we've gone to Canada where we can just, there's no Wi-Fi, there's no world except what we do every day is fishing and connecting with each other. So it started off as that. But I think it really changed for me the first time I did the Wake for Warriors event. So I
Can you
took,
give a little
yeah,
backstory about what that is?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So Wake for Warriors is a group that supports disabled veterans and takes them out on the water. And their theme is the healing power of water. And so they truly believe that if they can get veterans out of their house, out into nature with each other, some camaraderie, right? Some community, that they can heal them like internally and externally, like physically and mentally. And so for me, that it like spoke to my soul, like why do I feel so good when I go fishing? And when I don't go fishing for a while, I start to almost become depressed, right? Like I almost get this depression that happens. Or if my friends are out and I'm not out, which happened to me at the beginning of the season this year, I was like, oh, I'm so sad right now. Like I'm almost like unable to focus. And so when they brought that like concept of the healing power of water, it changed me. My mental state was like, oh, that's why I love to go fishing so much, because it's not being in the water for me. It's just being in nature and having the quiet of the ocean and the just this everything that comes with being disconnected from everything that I do on a normal basis. It changed me. And so that's the probably the pivotal moment where I was like, this can be something for other people. And then I started like wanting to get other people out on the boat with me. And you and I have talked about this. Like, I love catching fish. Don't get me wrong. Like, I love being the person that catches, but to watch someone who's never caught a fish catch a fish is like, it's like adrenaline. I don't know what it is, but my grandson came with us the last 3 years and he got hooked in coho season. And then he wanted to come back for Big Kings and he came back for Big Kings. He caught his first king. This is the first season that he hasn't been able to come with us because he's going off to college this year. And so, but it's our relationship. Like he's texting me like, how's king season going? Like, did you catch one? What'd you catch? Send me a picture. So there's something that changes people about this sport that allows anyone can do it. We also recently took one of my friends whose husband has stage 4 cancer and we took him out. He was the only one to catch that day, but the joy on his face reeling that fish in was it changes your life. Like you want that for everyone, We have this resurrection derby coming up and my husband's nephew, he loves fishing, but he does river fishing and he's never caught a salmon ever. And he's one of our team members on our boat for the derby. And I can't wait. Like I'm giddy about him getting out there and catching a salmon. I don't care if we win. I don't care who wins. I just want him to catch a salmon no matter what. Like that's my number one priority. And so for me, those two things combined took it to another level where again, I still love going out and catching my own fish. And every once in a while I'm like, okay, let's just go out just us. And let's, we get our rods, we get to do our thing. But there's this whole community of people that I would have never met before. And honestly, it started out with the guys because there's a lot of guys in fishing, right? There's a lot of men in fishing and they became my friends. But then there's this really cool network of women who are out there. And it's cool. Like it's like I mean, I wasn't with the cool kids in high school. I wasn't with the cool kids, growing up because I was raising my kids and I was always the young mom and then I was the old mom. And it's just, I never quite fit in. But in this group, it's like we can talk and we can literally sit there and talk about all the things. And it's like, yeah, me too. Oh, yeah, me too. Oh, yeah, that's how I felt. And so it's like changed also the trajectory of friendships and relationships that I've had across time people I would have never met without the fishing community. I think of people like Leanne, who has her own rod company, people like Brianna, who run a charter business, people like you who run anglers. It's like this community of people that I want to be in and I want to be around, and they have the same goals as me, and they have the same kind of mentality, I guess, which is like, let's do this. Let's make it happen, whatever we got to do. So yeah, I think it's more than just the sport for me at this point. Although it started that way, it's definitely evolved into something that I'm super passionate about. I would love to get more kids on the water. We talked about that in the past. Like the Wake for Warriors event was just like the tip of the iceberg for me to like figure out how I can do more of those types of events to get more people out on the water who've never done it before, and encourage them to do some of these things that maybe they've never tried before.
Love that. It really is a way of life. And the people who connect with it and love it as much as we do, it's beautiful to have that community around you. It's so much of a community sport and a team sport, but then also you're away from the world, like you said, when you're in Canada, and that dynamic balance of all the different variables, it's absolutely magical. And you mentioned the Resurrection Derby and that you're taking your nephew, and I think that's so cool. And I will never forget my first derby, and I'm sure you can relate to that too. But this Resurrection Derby, tell us a little bit about that and what makes this an extra special experience for him. It's his first derby, I'm assuming.
Yeah. Well, Darren, my husband, is kind of, he's had some history with Resurrection Derby, right? It's his favorite derby of all time. When I first met him, he was fishing the first one that I was exposed to. I didn't go with him. He had a partner, Trace, who went out with him every Resurrection Derby. They went together. We were kind of just dating. So he just went and did it. And I was like in the background. And he took third place, and he was like really happy. And, was like, oh, this is so great. And then about a year into our relationship, we had the next Resurrection Derby, and I was in Dallas, and he was fishing with Trace again, and it was kind of their thing. And again, I was just 1 year into fishing, so I was fishing, but I wasn't in it yet. I was kind of still dabbling in on the outskirts of it. And he won, like he won $10,000, like he won the derby. And he was so excited, and I was so excited, and we were all just so excited. And out of that same derby, Trace's ticket went into this Northwest Derby series, and he won a boat. And Trace and Crystal are some of the coolest people you'll ever know, and they're so deserving, and I was just, I don't know, there's something about this derby that it's not just about the winning, though. It's about the relationships that you form when participating together with these folks. And so a lot of people think that when Darren and I fish, like probably he gives me a fish, or maybe like, I literally am the type of person who I will not claim a fish that I didn't catch. And I mean, it has to be my setup and my depth and my everything. Like I'm like adamant, especially in derbies. Like if I placed, it's my fish. I promise you that. And so, I fished a couple of other derbies, and I placed. I placed fifth place at Everett Coho, and I placed seventh place in Edmonds. And I got this bug of like really wanting to compete with the big dogs, and one of the big dogs is my own husband. So it kind of makes it awkward, right? Like we're competing against each other too when it comes right down to it. But Resurrection Derby, like truthfully, I've never gotten to participate in it because it wasn't around when I started really fishing derbies. And so I've never been a fisherman in the Resurrection Derby. Yeah. So for me, that's why it's so important to bring it back, because I freaking want to fish one. Like, come on now. It's kind of like the cornerstone of our club too. Like our club, it's centered around this event that has been so monumental for the area and for our fishing and for our club and some of the things that our club does. Our club sponsors scholarships for kids who want to go into fishing and in some related fields. Our club sponsors fish enhancement in the area. And so we are truly a nonprofit organization, and this is how we do those things. And so it's not just a bunch of people getting money for fishing. It's truly a community event that helps the community thrive. And so this derby is definitely key for me. It's coming up here, but I think the way that I've been able to move forward in the fishing community is to be on the stage one time at least, and be up there, with some of the big hitters and be able to say like, hey, I'm holding my own here too. And I don't know, it's just fun. It's fun to have that respect. It's fun to like have people who you really respect in the fishing community come up to you and be like, congratulations, or I know who you are. Like, I remember you placed in the derby. And so resurrection is just one of those key ones that we got to bring back. And I'm really excited to partner with all of our team, but of course have you champion that for our club. And it's really going to give a bunch of people an opportunity to do something from, in my case, that I've never done before, which is fish in this resurrection derby. And again, my nephew and my niece are coming up, and they don't get a chance to see this community that we're in. Like, they live in Oregon. They don't get a chance to see what we really do. And I'm excited for them to experience it. They're young. They're, like, I want the next generation to really get hooked into these types of things and really experience what it means. The derbies are families, they're people, I went and fished the Sydney Derby in Canada, and a family won. Like, the kid won the kids division and the dad won the whole thing. And
Awesome.
I was like, this is cool. Like, I really want to do more of this. And so I'm hoping that by doing this, our club can really start to inspire the next generation to get out on the water and start doing stuff.
Love that. And also, can we give listeners a little bit of details? We're going to link everything down in the show notes for you guys for if you want to buy tickets. But do you want to give a little bit of details about the Resurrection Derby and when it is, what it costs?
Yeah.
How do people get tickets?
Yeah, absolutely. It is the 16th and 17th of August. There are information linked in our at psafidalgo.org or resurrectionderby.com. We'll have an optional captain's meeting on the 15th, and then the derby will happen Friday and Saturday, 16 and 17, here in the San Juan Islands. It is an all salmon derby, and we'll have a ceremony at the end. Tickets are $400 a boat, and you can have up to 4 anglers on your boat. And so everybody who is on the boat that's an angler gets a ticket in the derby. And so then they'll land their catches and get a chance to win our grand prize, which is $10,000. We have some pretty significant prizes also that will be won as part of the derby, right? So like I won a fillet table for getting 7th place in one of the derbies, which is a pretty significant prize for 7th place. 7th place, you think I get a flasher or something, maybe, if that. So we have some pretty neat prizes that are going to be a part of the derby as well. So if you don't get first, second, or third, that doesn't mean you won't win something pretty cool from our club. But yeah, that's the details. There's more in the link here. And then also, of course, you can reach out to us and we'll be happy to answer any questions that you have about the derby itself.
And really, it's just there's not a lot of derbies around anymore. So it is a really cool experience to do it in the summer. This was a winter derby. This is the first time we're doing it ever in the summer. And there's a lot of fisheries out here that still have a lot of nice fish this time of year. So it's going to be really fun. It is sponsored by Tom and Jerry's Boat Center. And if you click the link there in the show notes, you can see what all the prizes are. We've got prizes for kids. We've got prizes for active duty military and a veterans prize, women's prize, secret weight. But ultimately, it's the experience. And as Karey's talked about this whole time, the community, like I wouldn't know her if it wasn't for derbies. And she's one of my dearest friends. We've gone on so many fishing trips together. We're having tuna at their house tonight. So from one of our fishing trips down in the Baja. And for real, guys, if you've never fished a derby, I wanted to have Karey on because she's so inspiring, but she's also so relatable. Like, you can start today. You do not have to be the number one perfect 30-year veteran fisherman. Go buy a ticket, get in there and have a blast and learn from all these epically incredible fishermen that are out there. Any other final words that you want to share for listeners?
I just think that if it intimidates you or it scares you, it's probably a good thing. Like if all of this is like, wow, that's a lot, that's probably a good thing. It just means you're growing. Like there's no growth without a little bit of fear and a little bit of intimidation, a little bit of, challenge that comes along with that. But I promise you, once you get out there, that there are so many of us that want you to succeed. Our opening weekend, I was listening to this young man on the radio. He was probably 8 or 9, and he was calling his grandpa on the radio. And he was saying, Papa, you got any fish in the box? Papa, they just put one on next to me. And if that doesn't make you like a little teary eyed and a little bit emotional, then, maybe this isn't the sport for you. But if it gets you going and like, oh my gosh, I would love to have something that I can take my kids or grandkids and do. I would love that I could take my friends or my, that one person who maybe is kind of, run out of hope and they want to do something. This is the kind of thing that can really change that for someone. And it doesn't have to be some therapy. It doesn't have to be some long drawn out conversation that you have. But when you're on the water together and you're just hanging out, things get worked out. Like you don't have anything else to do but talk to each other and have deep conversations. And again, Jamie mentioned, we met through this thing, this derby thing, right? And we did, but we've had some of the deepest conversations, more than I've had like lifelong friends with, right? And it's just because we have a common interest. It brings us together. And then sometimes we talk about other things besides fishing, life, happiness, relationships, business, like leadership. Like we talk about all kinds of things on these events. And so don't be afraid to just try. And I promise you that you'll get something out of it. And at first, it might be something little, and then it'll be something else. And then also put yourself out there, like ask questions, say hi to people on the water. If you recognize somebody, wave at them, say hi. Like that's how we aren't even on the boat together all the time. I went on their boat for the first time, known them for like years. And I finally rode on their boat because normally we're like across the boat from each other. We hang out at houses and stuff, but eventually it will turn into something really, really great. So I encourage you all, just take a chance, just get out there, whatever it is. If it's this derby, then great. Have that be your catalyst for getting you going. If it's joining the PSA and coming to one of the meetings, do that. If it's just listening to the Anglers podcast or listening for Fishing for a Reason and really starting to get inspired by what we're talking about here, whatever it is, just keep moving that step closer to actually doing it. Because until you actually do it, you're not going to get that feeling that you're looking for. Once you do it, though, I don't think we'll have to convince you anymore. Like I think that will be it. You'll be in and you'll mention this and be like, I was listening to you all and you said do it and I did it and now I'm hooked and thanks a lot. Now I have this really expensive hobby that I have to try.
Worth every penny.
Worth every penny. Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, definitely. But get out there. Just get out there and do it. Don't be afraid. Ask us. We're here. Like I think the reason why I really still love doing some of the things that I do is when someone reaches out to me individually and was like, hey, tell me about this. Like maybe they're afraid to ask in a group. That's fine. Like just ask one-on-one. Like we'll help you. That's the one commitment that we have is we'll definitely help you. So thanks for letting me be on, Jamie. You have just, you say I inspire you, but you inspire me. Like when you started Anglers, I was like, oh my gosh, this is like, I'm so proud of you. Like, I'm so proud of everything you put together here. And I'm proud of this podcast. I think it's the next evolution to reaching more people. And I'm so excited about that. So thanks for letting me be your guest.
Well, I'm thrilled to have you on, and this was an absolute dream. And I'm going to have you on again, whether you want to or not, to be honest. So there will be some blackmail involved. No, I'm just kidding. But thank you so much for sharing your heart and your truth and inspiring somebody to maybe go out and cast that line in the water because it can change a life. So thank you, Karey. We really appreciate you. And with that, we will catch you next week. Derby tickets are available till October 14th. Check the link below. And if you're listening to this a year from now, reach out if you have questions. As Karey said, join your local PSA club and surround yourself with amazing humans. It'll change your life. Thank you.